Yeah, so about the last 4 days, I would say, I've been spending my time trying to understand indigenous ways of knowing and how that is being integrated into the university system. And this is really a fascinating topic. I think that you'll see this. It might take me a second to think about what's the first thing to say, but, um, well, logically, I guess you'd start just by saying, trying to explain what indigenous ways of knowing are. And as far as I can understand, it's relativistic. So it's not concerned with finding a universal objective truth that's true no matter what anybody thinks. Like the Western world is sort of based on that, that the truth is what it is. And we work really, really hard to figure out what the truth is. And with regard to the physical world, I mean, just look what we can do. It's truly miraculous. You know, the objective frame, it's undeniable. If you're dealing with the physical world, you want reasoning and good evidence and good experiments, randomized trials, whatever, you know. So that's mastery, right? What they call Western science, which wouldn't exist without mathematics from the Middle East and insights from India. And now in the world, there's more non-Western scientists than Western scientists. Of what you mean by Western scientists is white people. A lot more, right? So to call it Western makes sense only in the around 16, 1700s uh, in that range. We made so much intellectual progress, and um, like in practical terms and in abstract terms as well, we started experimenting more with ideas of democracy. And I think that there would have been a lot more emphasis on critical thinking than you have today. But anyway, you just look at what they did. I don't know that I know enough to explain how it all worked, but what I do know for sure is that what it said is that if you think you have knowledge about the world, and that knowledge is coming from an expert that can't be questioned, right? Or if that knowledge is coming from a dream or a vision, you can expect that I'm not going to take it seriously. And that sort of way of knowing is Aboriginal way of knowing, because it's pre-science is what it is. And there's a relativistic thing. This is kind of don't believe that there's any such thing as the truth anyway. And like in physical terms, the pumpkin's on the table. Nobody's going to argue that it's an objective fact, right? But in the moral realm, it becomes a lot more difficult to determine what is. Let's say this is a difference between conservatives and liberals. I think is that we believe that there is an objectively most correct choice when you have a moral issue. And with the what is her name? Justice Barbara Young is the woman who made this decision to essentially put First Nations right to title and fee simple landowners title. She actually put the First Nations above. That's what her determination did. And I just want to use that as an example of a relativistic moral failing. Because in that situation, what she had to think about was the well-being of this country and the well-being of British Columbians. That is the thing. Whether or not this attitude, for example, is in the spirit of reconciliation, it's a far distant second. Far, far distant. The thing for her to think about at that point was how her decision would impact the well-being of British Columbians, a province that's already struggling economically, and a country that's already struggling economically, and a country that's struggling economically because of people like her. Like I can pretty much guarantee that in the last 3 elections, she voted Liberal or NDP. which means she's responsible for this mess. We're paying $80 billion, $80 billion a year in just interest on our debt. You've got this really difficult to comprehend level of immigration from one particular area of the world, and allowed it to this would have been business owners and politicians and yeah, but what's happened is that we've allowed them to totally take over the bottom end jobs, right? So people trying to enter the workforce can't find a job. And I think that this year they've let in 770,000 temporary workers so far. Like, they're absolutely horrendous. What the Liberals have done to Canada is, well, the suffering that it's caused people as a result of poverty mostly is immeasurable. And I would say that probably a lot of that is because of this sort of mindset. Well, you never know, it might be this way, it might be that way, right? In morality, sometimes it's as concrete as the pumpkin on my table. You either get it right with that decision. Nobody was pushing her to put First Nations or Aboriginal title above fee simple. Nobody asked for it. The First Nations weren't asked for it. But she put it in anyway. And that's going to affect investment. Just recently it did. There's a $100 million plant that was going in has been refused to that. One of the guys that owns the house can't renew his mortgage. Well, who would invest in a country as stupid as this? It can't even assert that. When the British arrived in British Columbia, there were only 30,000 First Nations people here. And now their descendants are legally, really pushing towards the position where they own everything.